Welcome to the Bridge of Two podcast.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome back to the Bridge of Two podcast.
A far, far away bridge. We haven't said that in a while.
Far, far away bridge. You know what? This bridge is far, far away from where it used to be.
I mean, it's like away. It's not like far, far away. 10 minutes down the road.
We are currently in a different recording location.
Different studio.
Because Jeremiah has moved. And I will give his address now in 5, 4.
You will not.
But yes, we have left the old table.
We've left the old and we've come to the new. That's right. The table's not here. That table got bought by a family member.
Bought? They paid you?
Yeah.
Sweet. How much?
Bishops paid $40 for it.
Oh, it's on record now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is what my wife told me. We are currently recording on the floor in front of the couch on a coffee table.
Sitting crisscross applesauce.
Mm-hmm.
Because
as all podcasts should be recorded.
Yeah, really, it elevates. The lower you get, the higher your podcast game gets.
You know, it gives it a real Asian feel, you know. If we have like the cushions under us, we'll be like little Asians sitting at our table eating. Or
increases our humility.
Yes.
Which, you know, that's what you need in a podcast is
humility.
That's what people want to hear.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Very, very humble.
But yeah, I gotta say, I'm gonna miss that table.
I wonder what
I'm sentimental about it.
I hated that table.
I understand.
I wanted that thing gone.
But we soaked so many hours of podcasting.
That's true.
It's sacred. But it's okay.
True. But you know what? We'll get a new one.
Yes, we will.
And there will be a new table. Or if we wanted, we can buy our own like smaller table to record on.
We could even get like the actual arms. So it'd be like in front of our face and
that would be fancy, yeah.
Having it down on these little tripod things.
That could be nice.
Because
figure something out.
Then you can tap the table to your heart's content. Don't do it.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Needed to be done. I will be curious to know what the acoustics sound like, if that has any effect on the recording.
Yeah.
Because if worst comes to worst, we can always just throw a table in the closet.
True. The acoustics would be amazing in there once like all your clothes are hanging out.
It's a huge closet, so even with all the clothes, we can still fit a table in there.
The bridge can go back in the closet.
Burped into the mic, sorry.
That's okay.
Didn't expect that one to come.
Yeah. Be interesting. But yeah, we are here starting a new chapter in the bridge.
I'm glad to be back on the bridge after having to get off for a week.
Yep, you were temporarily replaced.
Yeah, off the bridge. I was sick and I had to stay behind on one of the bridge runs.
Yeah.
Because they let slaves do that in Stormlight. They let them stay behind when they're not feeling well.
I mean, if Kaladin's the bridge leader, the crew leader.
It's true.
He would somehow blackmail someone into making that happen.
It's true. I was starting a new job and was getting used to that schedule and just too busy in general with the move coming up and then with all the other things and more things that I won't allude to right now. And then so it was busy and I just wasn't going to be able to make time.
Yeah.
I probably could have, but it would have just been a big hassle and I had a lot of things I was putting off that I need to get done. So
yeah. Yeah.
So you had Josh and Josh on. No, Josh and John.
Yeah.
Gosh, too many J's, dude.
Lots of J's.
You had Josh and John on last week.
Yeah, that
sounded like a fun one. Yeah,
it was fun actually. Hero's Journey, talking about it. We talked a lot about Star Wars.
Love Star Wars.
And even us just talking about it was like giving me a deeper appreciation for just the whole original trilogy. Even the prequels too. We talked a little bit about Anakin's like his big arc, over this all 6 movies. But that's a good one. I think the conversation is really good. Definitely give it a listen. But it's good to have the OG
crew back.
Back. I did just feel like I just didn't feel the same comfort level of just, I don't know.
Dumb banter.
Yeah.
Our dumb banter back and forth.
Basically. Like, I didn't want to throw John off, too much. Like, I want to throw you off.
I appreciate that.
And you want to throw me.
I do want to throw you off.
We do that. We trade off on that. Anyway. But we have gone on. So what have you been up to in your little hiatus here?
Like I said, new job, new
Congrats.
place. Moved into a new place yesterday.
Lots of new things.
Yeah, lots of new things. Lots of things up and coming. I and my wife actually got to go see Return of the Jedi in theaters this week on Tuesday.
What?
And
I love that movie.
It was one of the things where like I was just like, obviously I wasn't alive when it came out in theaters. I was like, I have to go see it. Plus Star Wars is my favorite, and Return is one of my favorites.
Yeah. I
like it more than Empire, personally.
I'm with you.
Like, I would actually put it up there. Like, I think if out of the saga, if I had to pick my two favorites, would be Revenge and would be Return. I like a good ending, and they both feel like good endings to a trilogy.
I may have, when we ranked these in an episode early on, I may have put that as my top one.
I can't remember. I think I
can't remember.
I think I was the same thing as either Revenge of the Sith or Return of the Jedi. I always have a hard time picking between the two. And then, of course, Stephanie was already on top of it. She was like, we're going to get tickets whenever it comes out. We're going to go see it. Which is how I know I married the right girl. So yeah, we went to go see it. And I'll tell you what, I was like, I've seen this movie 100 billion times. Like, I've seen it over 100 times in my life. Right. Probably more. I was like, I wonder if it'll actually be any different watching it in theaters.
Yeah.
It was different watching it in theaters. Like, it was just... Despite having seen that movie over 100 times, I could sit through and watch the whole thing and not get bored. It was just seeing on the big screen, the loud noise. It was just great.
Was there a good crowd?
There was a good crowd. People were clapping too.
See, I think, just like there's something magical about the shared experience, seeing a movie and having like all the same, like you're watching this movie and you're seeing all these different moments unfold and things like that. But you're doing it with this huge group of people, and so you're all kind of like going through the same sort of journey at the same time. It's a very cool thing. And
it was cool because a lot of the people there were like my age, so they've obviously all never seen it in theater. It was all our first time seeing this movie in the theaters, even though we've all seen it a bunch of times. There's three dudes sitting next to us.
There's a lot of younger people.
There are three dudes sitting next to us, probably in their 20s.
Nice.
But all three of them had helmets. Stormtrooper helmets or bounty hunter helmets.
Nice.
Like that. They had to wear them to keep them on their lap. But that was cool. That was fun to see. People were clapping. Like everyone clapped at the end when the Death Star exploded. Spoilers. So that was fun. It reignited. Once again, I go through phases where like I go like a Star Wars phase or then a sci-fi phase and a fantasy phase, and I go through like those 3 to 4 things over a year. And it kind of reignited my Star Wars enjoyment and wanting to, so I gotta go back. I'm like behind on a lot of TV shows that I gotta go finish. Andor is one of them.
Yeah, I want to see Andor.
I'm halfway through. I'm on the 6th episode.
Nice.
It is. I watched a little bit of that 6th episode prior to everyone coming over yesterday to help move. Such a different feel. It's really cool. Like I'm watching, I'm like, this doesn't feel like Star Wars, but I know it is. And there are certain aspects that I'm like, this is Star Wars, but it doesn't feel like it's really cool.
Yeah, I feel like I heard something about the showrunner of that show basically told the crew, like this is like, this is Star Wars, but treat it like, think of this like this is a thriller, suspense, like espionage.
And that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it feels like.
And yeah, so that's cool.
Yeah, so that's really cool. I'm going to continue to watch that. I started up on reading. I'm going to see about going through the High Republic stuff. So I was doing some research. They have 3 phases that they're doing. And then each phase has 3 waves. And then each wave has an adult book, a young adult novel, and then a middle-aged novel.
Okay.
I think you can technically cut out the middle grade novel and it'd be fine. But they say like story-wise, you want to at least get the adult and the YA. And then they also have comics that go with it.
Okay.
And so I think they're just started phase 3 this year.
Okay.
But I have the very first book. And I read it
Light of the Jedi, right? Is it Light of the Jedi?
Yes. Yeah. I read it a while back, enjoyed it a lot. and then never did more. Went to go read when the second adult book came out, so it would have been for Wave 2 started. I was a little bit confused because they had thrown characters in there. I feel like that it seemed like I should have known, but I didn't. And I think it's because I didn't read any of the other stuff. Mm-hmm. And then the writing for that book at the time was really weird for me. I think it's because I just came off of Sanderson or just came off... No, I think I came off of Wheel of Time.
Okay.
And so the way it was written was just the pacing was way different than the Wheel of Time, so it threw me off. So I'd never really read more than a few chapters. But being back in a Star Wars mood, and then, not much of a spoiler, but sort of, Jedi Survivor started playing that. And it has a nod to the High Republic in it.
Cool.
I think it's going to be more than a nod. I don't know just yet, but it got brought up, and so that kind of made me think like, oh, maybe I, check it out. So I'm going to check it out. I'm going to read it. I'm going to see how good it is. The graphic novels, like the comics, I found the first 4 in like a graphic novel form on Kindle for like $2.
Nice.
So
cool.
Do all that. Other than that, yeah, just playing Jedi Survivor. I haven't had the time to sit down and play much, but I'm going to have to upgrade my processor and all that, my CPU.
Nice.
But I'm going to be playing that here soon. That's about it, though, for me. I mean, not much else. Just work.
Yeah.
Work's been, getting used to the new schedule and everything. Oh, I am working on a drawing.
Yes.
It's a draw this in your own style. There's a lot of artists will do, like, draw something and then they'll do almost like a... sometimes it's a contest, sometimes it's just a whatever, but to draw this in your style. So there's a character and you draw that character in your own style and post it. Well, there's a artist I follow on Instagram that's doing one as a contest with Huion the graphic tablets to do digital drawing on it.
Okay.
I really like his...
Like they're giving away one?
Yeah, there's like the top 3 are going to be getting different types of drawing tablets. But I like the artist's aesthetic. I like his characters. He's a very fantasy, Lovecraftian. Like the character I'm drawing is very Lovecraftian.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that right now, and I'm gonna post that here soon because by the 15th is the end of the contest, and I'm almost done with it. So, but yeah, nice. That's been it for me.
Right on.
What have you been up to?
Well, besides reading the book, The Voyage of the Dawntreader, we're talking about later, I been writing a little bit, working on my prologue for my book.
Nice.
Making some changes to it.
So you're back onto the book, the novel?
Yep, back on the book.
Very good.
The prologue I knew was just way too long. Mm-hmm. Maybe not for like an established author, but for a new author, that it's way too long. I was looking at this new book I got from Tim Akers. He just started this series called Wraithbound. But I was looking at the prologue, and I was just like, out of curiosity, let me see how many pages this is. And it's like half as long as his prologue's like half as long as mine. It's like 13 pages. So mine's like over 20.
Wow. Yeah, that is a long prologue.
Yep. So
it better be a good prologue.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because it's like it's really about like I'm really building these characters up, but I'm just realizing that I need to do more with less and maybe combine some characters or change some character roles around. But
I've always noticed too in a lot of books, especially books that I've enjoyed reading, the prologues don't necessarily set up the characters; they set up a lot of the world.
Right, and I kind of trying to do both. Like I'm setting up some characters, but also setting up something for the main character. The main character is not in the prologue, but it's something that will impact the main character.
That's what I normally see is like there are times I've read prologues where the characters in the prologue either really aren't even in the book, or they're only in the book slightly, or they're in the book really later on. Yeah, I think a good example is Aragon. Okay, the prologue for Aragon, the book Aragon. The characters in the prologue are characters in the book, but they come in later on, and the prologue really just sets up the plot of the story. I think the prologue shows how the dragon egg gets to where it's getting, basically. Okay. If I remember correctly, that might have just been... I don't remember. Maybe Aragon doesn't have a prologue. I'm pretty sure it's a prologue of Aragon. It's been a while since I read that book.
I've never read that one, actually. I read part of Eldest for whatever reason.
I never finished the 4th book. I got halfway to the end of the last book.
Really?
Yeah, and I never finished it. You want to know why, though?
Something you didn't like happened, or...
I was getting bored.
Okay.
But
the end of the last book.
But part of it is because Way of Kings was next on my list to read.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
So I think I was getting too excited, so it was making me not be able to focus on the last book of Aragon.
Uh-huh.
Start Way of Kings, and then from there it was just all she wrote.
Here we are. Bridget 2.
Or he wrote. Exactly. Here we are now.
Or he wrote, yeah.
Got all of the family. And the church.
And the church. So anyway, yeah. I'm really happy to be back with it, and I'm just enjoying working on it. I mean, today actually I was a little frustrated working on it because I was like trying to get the word count down, and I'm like, I keep adding more words. It's like I get rid of some and then I add more.
Just do what you got to do, man.
But I did actually. I'm like deleted a character from the prologue, more or less. Anyway, enough of that. Besides that, I've been playing. Oh yeah, I finished Hogwarts Legacy.
Nice.
Well, at least the main boss.
Main story.
Yeah, there's like a thing at the end where you're gonna go do your OWLs and
that's cool.
Do the House Cup. I think it's I don't know if the OWLs are actually going to be a test or if it's going to be like
you did it.
Yeah, maybe it's gonna be like a stat thing where it like shows all your stats or something. I don't know, but I haven't done that yet because there's a few more. I just want to run around and do some more things, kind of final things. But I did a lot of the extra stuff. I'm like over 60%.
Oh wow!
Complete on it.
Yeah, you've gone in on that.
But I think you can't actually end the game until you're level 34. Like
Really?
I'm level 32, and level 34 doesn't like your like end game quest doesn't open until you're level 34.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it kind of wants me to go around and do a few more things. So
yeah, it's a way to get you to.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
because there's enough still there that I'm curious enough to do a few more things. The map is like there's so much in this southern part of the map I've barely scratched the surface of running around and doing.
Man.
But
big game.
It's a good game. There's just some aspects of it that feels odd. It doesn't feel like Harry Potter in some ways. But that's mainly I think because, it's taking place in such a different time period,
Yeah.
But interesting storytelling, like the story with the goblins, and it kind of deals with like goblin versus wizard history, which is interesting. I wish they had non-spoilery. I just wish they had gone a little deeper into, I don't know, just feel like there was more they could have done with that in a more interesting way. Because a goblin is a villain, but there's like some aspects of what, he's that goblins are frustrated with that are kind of justified, but it doesn't feel like it really explores it as much as it could, But, and then just shout out to the side story with the Slytherin student, Sebastian, I think is his name.
Yeah.
Sallow. Mm-hmm. That storyline is really, really dark and tragic.
Really?
And yeah, I had like very, not mixed in a bad way, but mixed feelings about my own character's involvement in that story and stuff like that. It was a very interesting feeling. And I kind of just appreciated it as this is the story. And, I didn't like get frustrated about like that I didn't have more choice or agency in that part. I was just like, this is just what the story is. And I kind of just tried to, see what was kind of an interesting aspect of it. But I don't want to give away all that. But anyway, so definitely some cool stuff in it. And I hope they do another one. I feel like they left enough out of this one that they can use in a sequel.
Or like a massive
as like a hook.
Expansion.
Well, yeah, they could do. They haven't announced that they have any plans for
I feel like
additional content, but
it's pretty much almost a given that most
games do. Yeah, and they could just maybe.
Although this is a new studio, so who knows?
Right, Portkey or whatever.
Portkey Studios, I think.
Yeah. So that's basically it for me.
Sweet.
So we could take a quick drink break. We'll come back, and then we'll talk about Voyage of the Dawntreader Part 1.
Part 1, because we couldn't finish
it.
a 200-page book in 2 weeks.
16 chapters. It'll be good though. It'll be allow us to focus in on
certain aspects of the first half,
because it's an interesting. Not to get too ahead of it, but it's an interestingly structured book.
Yes,
but we'll get into that more in just a minute. So we'll be back. We are back.
We're back.
We came back to the podcast. We didn't leave you hanging. You're welcome. And
we're sorry, depending.
Oh yeah, well, you did this to yourself.
That's true. If you're listening, it's your fault.
So, shout out to the liquor store.
Shout out to all liquor stores.
Well, the liquor store I went into, I was looking for something specific. They didn't have it. The guy there was cool and asked me, if I had any other ideas of what I might want. Dropped that this is for a podcast and we like to try things. And he was like, anything? Like, is there anything you won't drink or whatever? So I was like, yeah, I mean, we've had
acid. I don't know if I drink that. I mean, maybe. You could probably talk me into it, maybe. I don't know.
Thankfully, he didn't recommend acid. Well, we'll find out. Well, after we try this.
It might be part acid, who knows?
But he said this thing is like what his something he loves to have all the time. It's rum. And we're talking about Voyage of the Dawntreader, so I was like, kind of fits.
It's sort of fitting.
It was a pretty high recommendation from him. So so this rum, so shout out to him.
Thank you, my good sir.
I didn't get his name, but he was cool. But yeah, so this rum, it says Bumbu, Boom Boo. I don't know how to say it.
Bumbu.
Let's go with Bumbu Rum Company. It says an authentic Caribbean legend. Bumbu is masterfully blended by hand from island rums and native spices chosen from across the West Indies. Based on 16th century native recipes, Bumbu reveals its history and craftsmanship in every sip.
Whoa.
I can't wait for that to be revealed. And it's a product of Barbados.
Barbados.
Shout out to Captain Barbados.
That is what I thought of.
Is that his name? Wait, that's not his name.
Is it not his name?
Barbosa.
Barbosa. Close enough.
It's like an anagram almost. Just missing the D. Anywho.
Yeah.
Let's try it. We haven't had it yet, so you can't. You can't say that I'm being giggly because of it.
That's true. Stephanie might.
Yeah, but I haven't had any yet. So anyway,
you just drank a whole bottle before you came over. That's all.
Good.
It's definitely rum. It is very good. It's a little smoother than other rums I've tried.
It's vanilla. It's like a vanilla rum.
Ooh, yeah, I do taste the vanilla. It's very good. So that's probably why he likes it with the cream soda. I bet you that with the Dr. Oh, I bet you that. Oh.
He said it's really good with Dr. Pepper cream soda. So maybe sometime. Maybe I'll order some because I still have it. So
I bet you it would just taste good with any cream soda. Really,
that's true. You probably could get the bottled cream sodas at Publix or whatever, like the orange cream soda,
or like a vanilla Coke Zero or something like that. Probably tastes good with too.
I love me some orange cream soda, like it's like dreamsicle, almost.
Mm-hmm.
Have that with that. That'd be good.
I don't know. Maybe.
You get your cream soda, I'll get mine.
The orange...
We'll meet, we'll try it, and we will see.
The orange might throw me off.
Might throw you on.
Fair point. I stand corrected.
Anyway.
I wish I had said it turns me off. Because then it might turn you on.
I don't know if I would have gone that direction, but...
it would have gone that direction.
All right, this is good. Actually, it's good rum.
I know. I really want to try it with
something to
Coke or
take a little bit of the edge off, but also sweeten it. All right, we got our rum on.
Oh, rum on!
Let's get our voyaging on the high seas on.
Our voyage on.
Did you know that the actor, this not for the movie, we didn't watch the movie in preparation for this, but the movie Voyage of the Dawntreader. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Did you like it? Do you remember?
As a kid, yeah, I haven't watched it since, but I've watched it. I've never watched Prince Caspian.
I feel like Dawntreader's better than Prince Caspian.
I watched Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I guess I just completely didn't ignored Prince Caspian and then watched Voyage of the Dawntreader, thinking that was number 2.
Oh,
as a kid,
I mean,
back in
it's not Caspian's not a bad movie, but it's I don't know. It feels. I think because they were trying to go for a kind of a more stereotypical. Well, Prince Caspian, remember, it's kind of a weird book. Like,
yes,
there's some weird stuff in it, and they probably didn't know exactly how to handle it. And I just think that they kind of made some choices that
I don't know why, but I have a memory hole of Prince Caspian. I do not remember reading that book for some reason. That's why I was like, why are we going to Voyage of the Dawntreader? Why aren't we doing Prince Caspian? Like straight, like, yeah. And then you said, and I remember the beginning. I remember the very beginning of the book. That's it.
I mean, it's out there. It's recorded. You can hear yourself talking. I know.
That's what's crazy. I just have
you might have read.
I was still in school.
Did you burn? Yeah, you were.
I was right at the end of school, so I was like, my brain was fried. I think I was in clinicals too.
You were.
So okay, so that was when I was doing 8 days a week, or not 8 days a week, 8 days in a row.
You were,
and then 4. Yeah.
Yep.
I was completely fried. That explains a lot, actually. How I managed to remember medicine at all is insane. That being said, I am really enjoying this read through.
Yeah.
Of Voyage of the Dawntreader. It's been easy to read. Reading Lewis, and especially in this book with the covering a lot of time in a very quick section.
Yeah.
Feels very different than reading Tolkien.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm reading a 2-mile walk in 40 pages.
Right. Yeah. For one thing, they weren't as much children books. Lord of the Rings wasn't, at least. The Hobbit was, but that's a short book.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Voyage of the Dawntreader picks up with a couple of our main characters. I'm glad, and that's part of the reason why we went from Prince Caspian to this book, is because this is I think the last, well, maybe, I don't know about Silver Chair, but this is the last book, I think, that follows any of the main Pevensey kids.
Mm.
And so there is if you go from Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to Prince Caspian to Voyage of the Dawntreader, there is and this book especially feels like a very direct sequel to Prince Caspian, because Caspian's in it. Whereas in Prince Caspian, when they come back into Narnia,
everything's different.
Everything's different. It's been like hundreds of years. People don't even remember.
Yeah.
That there were kings and queens and all this stuff. Whereas now it's only been 4 years. You're picking up with Prince Caspian where he left off. And, so, and the kids are only a few years older and stuff. So, but then they get a little stowaway that comes on with them, which really, I would say Eustace is one of, even though, Edmund and Lucy are very prominent characters in the book, it doesn't feel like they're the main characters.
It does feel like Eustace is a main character in this book.
Yeah. Well, the book opens talking about Eustace. Eustace is definitely comes out strong as a main character. Which is interesting considering the past two books, the main characters have been the Pevenses. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's also interesting that we don't have Susan and Peter in this book. Is that ever explained why?
Yeah, it explains early on. It's like, Peter. Well,
I know why they aren't.
Oh, like
narrative.
Why C.S. Lewis didn't?
But do we know why C.S. Lewis didn't?
I don't know exactly. Yeah, I don't know if it was just. I think in some ways, he kind of gave a lot of the characters their character arcs, in the first 2 books.
Mm-hmm.
And he decided, I guess, that they were, getting old enough that he needed to bring in younger characters to give them, I don't know exactly, but it may have had something to do with the character of Eustace. Maybe the idea for Eustace kind of demanded that, we can't have the 4 Pevensies and Eustace and have it feel like everybody's getting enough screen time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, because Eustace, we're covering the first 7 chapters of Voyage of the Dawntreader, which is pretty much Eustace's arc for the book. I'm sure he does lots of things, and I'm sure that when we read on, that we'll find that, you know, his arc still kind of continues, but as far as like, he has just a big character shift in those 7 chapters.
Yes.
That we thought was worth talking about if we were going to split this up.
Honing in on, yeah.
Yeah. So the book, the opening line is just so savage. The narrator of this book has so much contempt for Eustace and like whatever he represents, like as far as the kind of person that he represents, the narrator has a lot of contempt for it. The first line says, "There was a boy called Eustace Clarence Scrubb, and he almost deserved it." Just knock the name right away. His parents called him Eustace Clarence, and masters called him Scrubb.
Very nice.
So the Edmund and Lucy end up at his house. They're like cousins or something. Because of the war, I think.
No, I know that Peter and Susan are going to America.
Yes.
It has something to do with the dad. Not war, because war was the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This one has to do with just the parents doing something else.
Yeah, it was something to do with their dad was going to lecture in America.
That's right. Yep.
For 16 weeks, mother was to go for him because she hadn't had a real holiday for 10 years. Yeah, so it's kind of narratively gives a reason for them to be, you know, it's not
where
necessarily like,
yeah,
but super pertinent. But yeah, basically Lucy and Edmund find themselves at Eustace's house, and Eustace is the kind of person apparently that is just takes all joy in finding out what you like or anything you care about and just deriding it, making fun of it.
Yep.
You ever known anyone like that? You ever been that person?
I don't think I've ever been that person. I like some weird things, so I have no room to judge. I don't think I never, if someone was ever like that, I probably would have associated with them. So
yeah,
no, I never really had any instance of that. No one was ever mean to me as a kid, so
nice.
I'm very hard to be
because you're
mean.
Popular.
I'm very hard to be mean to.
Yeah,
I'm so great.
You're so great. I feel like
going back to that humility, you know.
I feel similarly great. No, I feel. I mean, I feel like there was at some point I adopted an attitude that people, when they would try to be mean to me, it just wouldn't affect me, and they would just kind of give up really quickly, or it would crack them up or something.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I was at. I think
a lot of it was sarcasm helped, but
when you feel nothing, it also helps.
Take another shot of rum. Yeah, well, he also Eustace. It's like he's an adult. Maybe that's it. It's like he's a grown up in a kid's body. You know, he thinks that anything like fantastic or imagination is like worthless, a waste of time. You know, make fun of it. He thinks that like he wants to know about like economics and like politics and all these things. It's like he's a kid that didn't have a childhood or something.
Yeah.
And so who knows? Maybe this is part of what Lewis is critiquing, is either, you know, not allowing kids to be kids, or maybe it's a way of like bringing an adult into the, you know.
Well, it's also, it does seem like it might be like a little nod to not letting kids be kids, because I mean, this is probably back in the time still. I mean, even nowadays, especially Christian households didn't like fantasy for the most part. They didn't think it was useful.
That's true.
And a lot of people still don't think fantasy is useful as a literary art.
Yeah, that's actually very true.
It's only just now becoming popular. And then two, it's, you know, anything magic was heresy or just against God. And I think this might be Tolkien's way of being like, just let kids be kids, you know. It's even jumping ahead, but it's even like a nod when he was like, you know, you and I would obviously know from this, but Eustace didn't, that this is a dragon.
Right.
You know, it's just like, because he was so kept from fantasy.
Right. He keeps talking about like he hasn't read the right books or right stories. Similar, it actually reminds me of Edmund in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, when Edmund is kind of going down this dark path. The narrator is saying that he didn't read the right books. He didn't read the books that Peter had read. Like they knew that like following a bird, you know, like a bird would lead him in the right direction. But Edmund is like mistrusting the bird and stuff. But
I do think it's a slight nod or hit to like fantasy can be good. And,
yeah, I think you're right.
And allegory, obviously a lot of his books are allegorical to an extent. And
well, mythology too. That was a big thing for Lewis, is like, Lewis believed that mythology, even though, and John and I talked a little bit about this last week. Lewis believed that mythology that pointed to things that were true, like maybe there was a god of this, and it's like, whatever that god is a god of is a good thing, but that's not God. But Lewis called these good dreams. Like there was like something in humanity, that knew that there's these things that are good, and and we should long for them and things like that, but they're not the ultimate things. And, Christianity is like the ultimate fulfillment of all these different mythologies' longings, basically. Yeah. And so I think you're right for sure that's probably a big part of what he's doing there with Eustace.
And it definitely seems too, is like, as Eustace begins to accept more of where he's at and what's happening and the fantastical is when he starts growing as a character and not being so stuck up and mean. Yeah. On top of the other things that are obviously being alluded to in the book, which we'll get to. Right. But
so they find a way back into Narnia.
Cool way to enter Narnia too.
It is very trippy.
That scene is reading it was very visually, easily to visualize. Yeah. Just the way he wrote it.
It's like they're looking at the picture and it start moving,
painting of the boat in those seas. Yeah. And all of a sudden they start feeling wind. Yeah. And then next thing you know, I think Eustace tries to do something with the painting, but ends up falling in.
Yeah, it's like they're standing. At one point they realize, maybe it's Eustace realizes it's like he's standing on the edge of the painting as if it's like a windowsill or something. And then they all fall in the water and get rescued by the Dawntreader.
There are some real interesting tidbits too when they're in the water that like just get thrown in that I don't know if have had like significant payoff at all yet. Of like Lucy kicks off her shoes. It's just like a weird thing that's put in, and it's just like, cause she knows, basically she knows to do this, so she kicked off her shoes, and now she's up on the boat, but now she has no shoes. It's just interesting.
What I was looking for is one of the iconic fantasy rivalries. I just after reading this, Eustace versus Reepicheep.
Amazing.
Just amazing. Like for like of all the people to have to fall into a fantasy story, there's no way he's going to Eustace is going to assent to treating this oversized mouse as a knightly lord or whatever. But Eustace can't fully appreciate the situation he's in, and he keeps saying things he shouldn't say to Reepicheep, and Reepicheep keeps basically like, are you going to get a sword?
Are we going to duel?
Are we dueling now?
Reepicheep is such their relationship, at least through the first 7 to 10 chapters. I haven't read past the 10th chapter, but Reepicheep and Eustace's relationship in the book is so interesting because not only that, I mean, obviously, jumping ahead again, but so they're at odds through most of the time because Eustace is kind of just a jerk. Yeah. And Reepicheep is definitely be classified as lawful good. Yeah. And
he's like a paladin kind of too.
But there's a point too where I think people are considering leaving Eustace maybe or something about that, and Reepicheep is the one that stands up and says, "No, we can't." And then Reepicheep's even the one that spends the most time with him when he's a dragon, if I remember correctly.
I just love Reepicheep in this book. I think, and Reepicheep's definitely one of the main characters, I would say. He has this thing that is mentioned early on when you meet Reepicheep that they're on this mission. So it follows directly from the events of Prince Caspian, that when Caspian was a kid, all the lords that would have had the right to rule, the Narnian right to rule, they would have been next in line, basically. That the Caspian's evil Uncle Miraz or whatever shipped them all off in different directions and said they had to go, and they never came back. And so Caspian, now that things are kind of put right enough with Narnia and his kingdom, he's going to basically go to the different islands and things that they would have been sent off to and see if he can find what happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Reepicheep is hoping that they can go into the utter east, because that's rumored that's where Aslan's country is, and he wants to go see Aslan's country. You know, it's like he's just got this big longing. Yeah, it's a great longing that he has, very noble and, you know, definitely very symbolic longing for Christians. And but yeah, that's something that's kind of, I'm sure that we're gonna. I've peeked the chapters. I'm sure we're gonna get to see exactly, you know, what he's going to get an answer to that question he has about, because he had like some prophecy spoken over him.
Yes, I cannot remember where or what.
It was like when he was a little mouse. There was his like nurse spoke this prophecy over him, saying that where sky and water meet, where the waves grow sweet, doubt not, Reepicheep, to find all you seek. There is the utter east. And he said, I don't know what it means, but the spell of it has been on me all my life. So that's definitely a very, and Reepicheep, he'll do the thing where he just like sits at the front of the ship and just like looks out.
Longing.
Yeah.
Well, a good dichotomy too, I noticed while reading, is there's on occasion where you almost have a comparison between Caspian and Eustace, where a good example I'm thinking of is when Caspian gives up his quarters for Lucy, and Eustace makes internal comment of like, you know, basically, why does she get her own room and we're stuck down here in this nasty pit? You know, or when Eustace is like feeling feverish when they're running low on water and the storm and all that, and he's like trying to cheat some, and then Caspian's like, we're all feverish. Like, we all feel this way, you just kind of have to deal with it. It's just an interesting dichotomy between the two characters. This noble king who actually is looking out for his subjects and people on board, and then Eustace, who's just a jerk.
Right.
Currently a jerk and thinks about himself mostly. Right.
Yeah, and that's like just kind of I think a recurring thing with Eustace too, is he kind of keeps insisting that the world should work the way he understands the world to work. You know, he can't accept that he's in Narnia and this is how the world works, you know, and he keeps getting himself into trouble because of it.
And that, you know, it can even be seen as almost like a understanding of like people in the world think the world should work the way they want it to, when it doesn't. You know, as a Christian, you understand that there is a truth and there is a single truth. And no matter how much we insist on other things, that's not going to change what is reality. Yeah. So it could be seen, you know, that way too.
Yeah, it actually makes me think of the book of Proverbs. Like, the whole thing of the book of Proverbs is like, the whole message of the book of Proverbs is these lessons about this is the way the world God made works. And if you try to like do things a different way, you're going to end up in lots of trouble. Dead, you know, whatever. And I think that's a big thing with C.S. Lewis, Tolkien, and fantasy in general. Is it's kind of meant to take you out of your world that you think you have a handle on, introduce you to a world that has different rules, because it's kind of what it's doing is it's telling you that maybe the world doesn't work the way you think it is. It makes you more open to that. And so Eustace is a very appropriate kind of viewpoint character, kind of a us character, to see this character who is just so kicking against this reality and how much trouble it gets him into, you know.
And it's really cool that we get that perspective. Like, we're not getting a lot of perspective from Edmund or Lucy. We're getting most of it from Eustace. Right. And it's cool to get that perspective because it's coming from someone who doesn't understand the world of Narnia like Edmund and Lucy do. Because we could get Edmund and Lucy's perspective and just be like, oh, well, it's just another trip to Narnia and this is how things work. Instead, you have Eustace from his perspective, and he has conversations at some points or another where people are trying to say, no, this is how you're viewing this is wrong, or you don't understand this, or Edmund and Lucy even understanding things that are happening to Eustace that he doesn't understand. Right. Which is very interesting.
So as as they kind of start to get a little bit of a status quo going on the ship, excuse me, they get to these islands called the Lone Islands, and they see like they get off, they see a group of people around a fire, and they make them sit down and like eat with them, remember? And then they're like immediately taken captive as slaves. That's where they find one of the lords.
Yep.
So they find one of the lords. He's been trying to just make his way as best he can there, but
he actually buys Caspian.
Right.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting turn there, because it's like he buys him, and then something clues Caspian. I feel like something clues Caspian into him, his identity, and then he's like, "You reminded me of someone," and that's, and I wanted to, make sure you're taken care of, or something like that. Some kind of noble reason, even though he
bought a slave.
Was at a slave market buying slave.
Bought a slave and didn't buy the others.
I mean, I guess if we're being a little bit, that guy probably deserves a little bit more than he gets in terms of like a little bit of a scolding. It sounded like he's in his own mind, he's rationalized, he's trying to still do some noble stuff there, but he's still participating in like a system that's really upside down there,
I see it as going back to Christian metaphorical and allegorical of trying to do what you can, but obviously not, still failing, and that aspect in a lot of circumstances.
Yeah, that's actually good. I mean, that is a good example. That's a thought of like, in our own ways, we are trying to do our best to, serve God, follow him, and things like that. But if the like long lost king, not long lost, but if the king returned, right, and you realize you were talking to him, you would feel like you had a lot of explaining to do.
Oh yeah,
and that's kind of his reaction when he realizes he's Caspian. He like kneels immediately, pledges himself to him, and tries to explain himself, and essentially he repents.
And then you get the cool scene of them going into the slave market they go to the Duke's house first.
I love that scene so much.
And I love that the Duke's sitting there trying to be like, who are you and how dare you and how can you even prove this? And Cassian's like, get the heck up and get out.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't care. Doesn't even explain himself. It's just like, I'm the king and that's it. And go.
It's a similar thing with Eustace. Like, he's just like, this is nothing on the schedule. Nothing in it's like there's like all these forms and things you have to fill out and all this stuff. It's like, this is the way the world works to them. And then this other paradigm of the way the world works comes in is just like, we'll just replace you then. And you're not
following Narnian law despite being under Narnia,
right? And
so you need to get out.
Yep. So,
and then they oust him. They put the
Lord that just repented
as a duke.
Yeah.
And then their next order of business is to go free all the slaves, and then not only that, but he makes the slave owner pay all the people back who bought slaves.
Yep. Boss move.
Which is a boss move.
So they cross that island off their list, they move on.
I want to stop here, and I like as they leave the Lone Islands, you have their next bit of journey to the next island is written through the perspective of Eustace's diary.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. It was just very funny to me.
Was that whenever they had the rations and stuff?
I think
the storm. It was the storm, right?
Yeah, it starts on page...
Yeah, the storm and what came of it.
It starts on page 40, or around page 40.
You're right. Yeah, it explains the storm, and then it starts to go into the whole... It's all first person from Eustace's perspective.
It's just him writing his diary.
Pretty funny.
It's funny, and it gets more into Eustace's head.
It's ridiculous.
Which I think is perfect for the next bit that's about to come up.
Right.
We're really getting into Eustace's head now and what he thinks of everything and how he feels about everything, and then we're going to get to where we're about to go.
The ship is very in bad shape, and they just kind of make it to this other island where they're going to be able to hopefully find a tree that they can turn into a mast and get some supplies and things like that. Get some fish, all that sort of thing. But once again, Eustace, thinking he understands the world, how it works, and how he should handle things, decides that he's going to sneak away.
Because he doesn't want to do any work.
Oh, yeah, he's so lazy.
He's lazy. He doesn't want to do any work, so he's going to sneak away.
Yeah. and go like hide it and like sleep in a cave or something.
Well, he's gonna go hang out. He's gonna go hang out in the mountains.
Yeah, but he thinks he's gonna be able to somehow like wake up like in time to where.
Well, it's not even that. What he does is he goes up into the mountains to go escape, and then he's like, I forget what brings him down, but he finally starts heading back down, but he heads down the wrong path, and it leads him to the little lake.
Right.
And as he's there, lo and behold, but you get a little cave with a dragon that crawls its way out, and that dragon happens to be on death's door.
Right.
Takes a sip of water and dies. Which is the most hilarious introduction to a dragon.
Isn't it? Because,
it's strange.
Because a dragon is usually like used as this big, fight scene, a big, and even like you think of like The Hobbit, it's this big back and forth riddle game with Bilbo and stuff. But instead, it's just like the dragon just dies.
The dragon crawls out, takes a sip of water, and dies.
Old man dragon or something. And it's just like, what was this dragon's life like on this random island just out here?
Well, then you get So yeah, that's when Eustace decides to go into the cave, finds all the treasure, puts the band on his arm.
Yeah, he starts stuffing his pockets. And he puts that band on his arm.
And then I guess he gets sleepy and goes to sleep for some reason. I don't know what his thought process was. I don't know how he thought he'd be okay.
Well, because he'd been hiking. It's like they had the water ration. They hadn't had much food, and then he goes on a hike.
Yeah, so he's
very
tired.
Good survival instinct.
And I guess in his mind too, the ship. That's right. I think he's like, they're not going to leave without me.
Right.
Which luckily they wouldn't.
Right, because they're unlike maybe many people, they're noble and that sorts of thing. They're not the kind of people the way he imagines them. These horrible people that are so unkind, so brutal.
Not who they are.
That's not who they are. They wouldn't do that. But yeah.
So he falls asleep, wakes up, and you do get this. It's so weird. You get this weird, and it makes a little bit more sense than some other transformation type scenes, where he doesn't realize that he's transformed. Yeah. So he sees a dragon crawling on his right, and he sees one on his left. He's like, "There's two dragons in here. Holy crap!"
Yeah, he thinks he's between them.
And it's like not until he runs out and like, I think he sees his reflection. He's like, "Oh crap!" Yeah. But that's cool because a lot of times you see your transformation, but they're like, "I have transformed into this dragon." It's just he woke up and he's like, I guess in the sense he wouldn't realize that he had transformed.
He's like running and he realizes he's on all fours. And he's like, "Why am I on all fours?" Yeah, it's a very humorous scene, but he's also still wearing this that armlet thing. So and it's like super tight now because he's gotten bigger.
Which just I'm just thinking about compartment syndrome. My goodness,
compartment
syndrome.
Oh, what's that?
If you cut off blood flow if blood flow is cut off to a certain area, like say like an arm for too long. Basically what happens is it's compartment syndrome where it starts swelling up to where, and it can't go anywhere. So you start swelling really bad. And then what happens too is because there's no blood flow, the body can't get rid of the toxins and the acids in your blood. And so it builds up with a bunch of lactic acid. So what happens, and people with compartment syndrome, you have to be careful. And there's other aspects to it, but when you release that stuff, yeah. Well, now your bloodstream kicks back on. All that lactic acid and toxins rush straight to your heart and throughout your body. Now your entire body becomes very toxic, and it can kill you. Wow. You actually have to treat that that's why sometimes tourniquets, people were worried about tourniquet use.
Okay.
Usually it has to be longer than what we use tourniquets for, but that's part of it. There's like a whole bunch of stuff with it. Anyway, this has been medical talk with Mike Herrick, and I probably got half of that wrong, but it's okay. I'm sure you didn't. But, it's interesting that the transformation internally in Eustace happens like pretty quickly. I mean, he starts to, and that's another, just going back a little bit. One of the things Lewis says whenever he's going to sleep is that he doesn't, it's almost like a rule that if you go sleep on dragon treasure and you're having dragonish thoughts and you're being greedy like a dragon, you're going to turn into a dragon. It's like it's something that he should have known better than to do if he had read the right stories. But he almost, at first he does have some like a little bit malicious thoughts about like, I'm a dragon. I could like
no one can mess with me now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not long that it really starts to hit him.
Well, he starts to feel lonely.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I like that Lewis used that, because I think as humans, we do seek companionship.
Right.
And if he's stuck as a dragon, who's going to be with him? Who's going to stay with him?
Right.
He'll just be alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, and it's really cool. This whole section uses its time for a lot of character development with Eustace in a very short amount of time, of like kind of realizing that he like you said, he started off wanting to be cruel, and then he starts realizing, oh crap, I'm going to be alone.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of starts making him click of like, I have been, maybe there's a little part in his brain of like, I have been cruel to people, even as a human, and that's what pushes them away from me.
Well, he, it says very early on in the book that he had no friends.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in reality, even though he was around people a lot, he was alone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't have friends, then you're going to be a lonely person, and he was so prideful that that didn't really bother him. He didn't care what other people thought. He didn't think he needed friends, but this kind of transformation kind of like physically like represents kind of who he was.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a loner. He was not didn't treat people in a very human way.
Well, he was very cruel.
He was very cruel, like a dragon.
As dragons can be.
Yeah.
Very greedy as dragons
Right.
can be. And yeah, you get a lot of which is nice. It's cool that it happens this way, because it makes sense from a Christian standpoint of he gets character development as a dragon. He doesn't come back and now he's come back as a human and now he's changed. He gets that character where he wants to help out. He's like, let me help. Let me do these things. Let me start flying people around the island. Let me do all these different things, where he has that character development still as the dragon.
Right.
And not after the transformation. He's transformed.
Right. It's not that he transforms, like he's already changing as the dragon, and that's an important thing, whether you're Christian or not. But I mean, if you want to change, if you want to do different, if it's you recognize that the way you're living your life is not working, mm-hmm. or you're having problems, you can't fix yourself and then change.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, changing is doing different things. It's
mm-hmm. It's a gradual changing. Right. It's a gradual fixing of or doing of different things, and then to be better, to do the better.
Right. And in Christianity, you don't come to God after you don't look like a dragon anymore. Mm-hmm. Essentially, you come to him
as the dragon,
however you look, whatever you are. Yeah. And then he changes you.
Mm-hmm. And then this is when you get the biggest, in my opinion, so far in the book, the biggest nod to Christianity, mm-hmm. where you have Eustace. I think Edmund's going out looking for something. And he finds Eustace as a person again.
Right.
And Eustace explains, he says, I don't want to explain just yet how I became a dragon. I'll explain it to everybody, but I do want to tell you about what happened to me. And he explains how he was laying as a dragon, and then he saw a lion. Mm. And he really cool input of, I was afraid of the lion, but not scared, but I had a fear of, which is a very biblical understanding of fear of God, but not being scared of God. Mm. And then you have this whole little thing where he takes him to this pond, and then Aslan, obviously this lion is Aslan, mm-hmm. and right. Aslan says, take off your skin and wash yourself clean in the pool. Mm. And then Eustace takes off the skin, and then, oh boy, it grows right back on. Mm. Takes it off again. Oh, it grows right back on. And takes it off again. And then finally Aslan's like, let me do it for you.
Right.
And then he says it's painful, but in a good way, if I remember correctly. I remember exactly what it says, but it's along the lines of it was painful when Aslan took the skin off. I could feel the tearing and ripping.
Yeah, he says something about
the very first tear he made was so deep that I thought it had gone right into my heart. And when he began pulling the skin off, it hurt worse than anything I've ever felt. The only thing that made me able to bear it was just the pleasure of feeling the stuff peel off. If you've ever picked the scab of a sore place, it hurts like bilio, but it's such fun as to see it coming away. Which is a very strange...
It's a very kid expression.
It is.
A way for a kid to express it, especially a boy.
But I liked that aspect, and once again, to really a big nod to Christianity of salvation and the tearing away of the shedding off of the flesh is only going to be fully completed in Christ and not on your own.
Right.
I like that aspect of Eustace trying to do it, and it doesn't work until Aslan says, no, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's a good, and that's even like thinking about him like starting to be helpful as a dragon stuff is a good, I think, example of that too. Is like, because you can change you can change like what you do, and you could be a helpful dragon, but you can't change like what you are. You can't do that.
You could be a helpful dragon, but you're still going to be a dragon.
Right. You can still, like, there's still going to be you're still going to have the nature of a dragon, or the, nature of whatever, the good example of that would be, but you can try and do better, and you can do better to some extent. But if you want to be something different, to completely remove that, or to be able to have that completely removed from you, you need someone else that can remove it.
You need the lion.
Yeah. And so that was a great... It's interesting. I found it interesting when I was reading it that the way he chose to reveal that was through a character telling a character, what happened, rather than like Eustace's perspective.
Which...
like a perspective chapter or something.
Really hints to evangelism. Of
going and telling good news,
spreading the good news.
Oh, it's like a testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Basically, this is Eustace's testimony.
You're right. That's a good point.
And Edmund has a really cool point in this too, where it shows that Edmund is, Edmund's gone through his trials. He mentions it to Eustace that he's gone through something similar. That he was, he had a similar instance of being a horrible person and whatever. But there's a cool thing where they're talking about afterwards, and Eustace says, I think Edmund calls him Aslan. And then Eustace says something, but who is, or do you know Aslan? And Edmund, who does, he's met Aslan and knows him, says the thing, he says, well, he knows me. Which is it really points to the fact that Edmund understands. It's a really cool point that I liked that was thrown in there.
Yeah.
Of not just being like, yeah, I know who Aslan is, but he's like, well, he knows he knows me.
The most important thing.
Is that he knows who I am.
Right.
Which obviously as a Christian is the most important thing, is understand that, you don't know, like, yeah, we know Christ is, but it's to be known by Christ.
That's the difference.
That's the difference.
Lots of people know who Jesus is, but it's who he knows is what will make the difference in eternity. And like what you said about the testimony of Eustace, that is a thing in Chronicles of Narnia, where you have characters that see Aslan, and then they have to go and give a testimony, and everyone doesn't always see Aslan. It's not like, I think in Prince Caspian that happens. I think Lucy sees Aslan, and they don't believe her at first. And I don't know if they ever actually see him, but they follow her to where they need to get to, because she was actually following Aslan. So I think that is a thing Lewis likes to throw in, is that there's an aspect of truth in believing truth and walking by faith. Someone else has this testimony, and you have to kind of take their word for it. That's a big part of Christianity is you see the evidence by the change in the person for Christianity.
And then and it's nice, with Eustace and Edmund, it's cool to have the aspect of seeing someone who does know Aslan and is not, and so Eustace is telling this crazy story. I think he says, like, I don't even know if it's real or if you'll believe me or whatever. And then Edmund's just like, yeah, it's Aslan.
Yeah.
Like, I completely believe you. So if someone who understands and is known by Aslan and knows,
right,
just fully accepting your testimony.
And I like that too. It goes on to say after that, about Eustace, that he wasn't perfect after that he still could go back to being himself sometimes, but he could go back to being that way sometimes, but that wasn't his default.
Yes.
That wasn't who he was anymore. It was something that he, had to come out of sometimes, but I like that it's said that, that it wasn't just like, that now you're just a perfect person or whatever, you know. But definitely, like, and so now we've talking about Eustace as this person who bucking up against the way the world works, at least as far as Narnia goes, which the whole point of Narnia is to give symbolic of what the world really works, how the world really works, and bring you into that world. And so he, going through this transformation, can now kind of stop going against the grain of the way the world works and operate in it. And, you know, we've read a little further, and you get to see him being a part of helping out and jumping in, doing what he can as best as he can do. Rather than just fighting against reality, you know. So definitely a very, very cool character, I think.
It'll be cool. It'll be fun to see what happens later on in the book as he continues on, and as the rest of the character continue on, and see some cool scenes, some interesting stuff. I've read a little bit further on, so, you know. Yeah,
it's cool how they, you know, you kind of get like these mini episodes of stories, because every island has its own little story and a little bit of its own little lesson and warning and things. So we'll get into that for sure the next episode. And thank you for joining us on this voyage of the Bridge Treader.
Yeah, I dig it. I'm about it. Yeah, we'll be back next episode with part 2 of our 200-page book.
Yes.
I'll be excited to finish it.
Yeah, me too.
I'm happy to go back and talk about the rest of it. I really enjoyed the first half of this book. I liked Eustace's story.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad we're back on Narnia.
The Narnia train.
Yeah. So,
all right.
Well, as we say on the podcast, this has been a Bridge of Two podcast. A far, far away bridge. It's good to say that again.
It really is.